Everyone in our class today, we are on our third lesson looking at Christian evidence. And I was going to tell y'all, since I'm borrowing a ton of stuff out of Wayne Jackson's book, I was going to tell you, if you are interested in this kind of information, if it's helpful to you, Wayne did a good book. It's called The Human Body, Accident or Design. And I'm using this mostly because it's going through just everything about the body, system by system. So if you're interested in that, this is actually Robbie's book. I borrowed a few from him. But I'm sure several of you know or know of Wayne Jackson. It's a good book, a lot of good information, and I'm borrowing some of it in our class. So let's start by looking at two scriptures and then we'll go forward. We're on the human body part 2 today, so we're going to kind of continue a little bit of what we started last Sunday. So if someone would be so kind, let's read our first scripture first, Psalm 139, and let's just read verse 14. Psalm 139 and verse 14. So this scripture we looked at last week, and it was really the only one, but the thing we need to remember and praise God for being as awesome and as credible as He is, because we are fearfully and we are wonderfully made. We didn't just happen. Made. Let's somebody read Acts 17 and verses 28 and 29. Acts 17 verses 28 and 29.
For in Him we live and move and have our being, as even some of your own poets have said, for we are indeed His offspring. Being then God's offspring, we ought not to think that the divine is being like gold or silver or stone, an image formed by the art and emanation.
So we know there's things that. Oh, I'm sorry, Jerry. Did you miss?
I was trying to say something good. It's like helicopter. I had trouble saying that.
Did I cut you off a word short? Go ahead and get that last word or two in. I'm sorry.
And imagination of man.
Imagination of man. My New King James Version says man's devising. So the end of the verse there is talking about the things we make out of silver, gold, whatever. We do things, we make things. Somebody made this, but that's not how we are. We are God's offspring, and in Him we live and move and have our being. We exist because of Him. So we're aware of these things. These two scriptures, just wanted to read them to begin with. But remember, the majority of our lesson, we're going to be talking about our design and the fact that with any design, there has to be a designer. And we're going to look at a couple of different systems. Does anybody remember the 3 systems we took time to look at last week? Integumentary, skin. What else did we talk about? We talked about bone, skeletal system, and what was the last one? Muscular. Hey! Y'all remembered all 3. I've only got 2 laid out for today. I got the 2 down, and I thought maybe it was a little difficult to get a third one in with time, so we may actually be a little bit early on these 2, but I thought going into one of the others would take too much time. So we're going to look at the nervous system and then some of our sensory organs and how wonderfully made those are and how amazing they are. So let's start, though, by just bringing back up again, what are the only 2 explanations for us being here? What's the evolutionist/atheist explanation for you? You just sprung out. Poof. You came from a crawly thing, but you just sprung. They started with this, and then we sprung out of it some way, somehow, through some wonderful miraculous events they would describe. It's amazing that they have to use miraculous and amazing events to describe why we're here, but they refuse to acknowledge that to God. Because God is miraculous and supernatural, and that's why we're here. But the evolutionist and the atheist would say, we sprung, we just happened, we evolved over billions and billions and billions of years. And again, the idea there is if they can throw out billions of years, they can make it seem slightly more plausible, maybe, to themselves. But they are just kidding themselves in trying with an extreme effort to deny the fact of God by coming up with these things. So there's the explanation they have. Now, what are some, just real quickly, what are some of the problems with that stance? We sprung up. We evolved. What are some of the huge, huge, huge problems with that? We're here because we just happened. What are some of the huge... You never get something from nothing, and for that stance to be the whole universe and the creation is something, and it would have had to come from nothing, so there's a problem with that. What else is other problems? There's tons. You cannot get something from nothing, and you cannot get life from non-life. So even if something could come from nothing, matter, the universe, even if that was possible and it's not, you can never get something living from something non-living. So even if matter did come from nothing, and it did, and even if that issue could be resolved, then you never get life from non-life. You know how many times that's happened in the history of man? You know how many scientists have tried to do studies? I know this one I read about a long time ago. I don't remember the year. Some of y'all may remember roughly the time. But man was amazed at how living creatures could come from like broth. Broth could set out on the table, soup or some broth could set out on the table, and within a few days, miraculously, there was living, crawling creatures coming out of it. You know what those were? They were maggots. So to the untrained human eye at that time, this was in the 1300s, I don't know. But to the untrained and unscientific human mind, that soup and that broth, which is not living, sprang forth maggots. That's amazing. Maggots from soup, from broth. Well, did those maggots come from that soup? No. We know what happened. What visited that soup? Over and over and over and over. But that was the kind of mindset that was in people's minds until we finally realized some things like, oh, that's the flies. They're the flies are going there. So here's what happened with that. Some I guess scientist at that point got smart, covered up that soup, covered up that broth airtight. Do you know how many maggots sprung from that soup or broth? 0. So then they tricked themselves into thinking it was because there was no oxygen in there. So they were explaining it away like, well, there's no bugs coming out of that because we closed it off and there's no oxygen in there. No, it was because the flies couldn't visit it. But every experiment that's ever been done to try to prove that life comes from non-life proves that that's false. Life only comes from life. So the first option is we just sprung, we just happened. There's all kinds of problems with that, but the two big ones are something never comes from nothing, and life never comes from non-life. And there's tons of other things that fall after that, but that's the two biggies to that. So what's the other option that we know is the right one? If it didn't just happen and we didn't just spring up, how'd we get here? In the beginning, God created. God made. Everything we see with the universe and everything that's amazing about us is a design, and God's the designer. Makes much more sense. Even if a person doesn't believe in God, which one makes more sense? Come on. It's very, very, very easy, but people will go to extremes to try to exclude God. Let me read one. I'm going to read quite a bit today out of this book. The book's got some good quotes by people, and I want to share those with you. So, all our body systems, those of you who took biology and took further classes, you know that all of our systems are dependent upon each other, and they work and blend together perfectly. So all of the systems that we have in our body that allows us to breathe, move, and do things, it's complex, and this complexity and the function that's required could not have happened on its own. Any logical brain looking at the systems and how much they interact and how complex it is would have to come to the conclusion, that couldn't have just happened. And it didn't just happen. Let me read this quote. This is from Dr. Alan Norse, and I don't know most of these folks. There is one today that you'll recognize I'm going to read. But Dr. Alan Norse, who voiced no religious affinity at all, apparently he was not a religious man, this is what he said, and it's true. The bodily mechanism is a masterpiece of precise planning, a delicate and complex apparatus whose various components work as a unit to achieve such diverse feats as scaling a mountain, building a bridge, or composing a symphony. Not a religious guy, but a scientist. And what he said, spot on. So, a masterpiece of precise planning, that's what you are. That's what we are. Exactly what we are. Well, who planned this masterpiece? Does it take any intelligence? Does it take a little bit of intelligence to build a bridge? Does it take a little bit of intelligence for somebody to compose a symphony? Of course. So, didn't it also not require intelligence for us to exist and for us to be? Of course it did. Of course it did. Any common sense would scream that if a bridge takes a little bit of thought, planning, and intelligence, what about us? We are far, far, far superior to building a bridge or composing a symphony. So let's go ahead and look at the two systems. And I've just got some bullet points here I want to go through, and we can have some discussion. Y'all can add some stuff because I don't have everything. But let's talk about the nervous system. The nervous system is our communication system. It's our communication center. And it involves mainly our brain, our spinal cord, and all the nerves going out from the spinal cord. So our nervous system is responsible for the things that our organs do. We talked about our muscles. Our nervous system tells our muscle to do this. It's telling, I don't know how many muscles, just by me doing this, the brain is telling so many muscles to do their thing with everything we do. The nervous system causes our liver to function, our kidneys, our heart, and it does it in different ways. Our heart is a muscle, but it doesn't have to be told what to do like your arm or your leg. Your brain keeps your heart beating. It's automatic. It's an automated nerve muscle, and that nerve tells it to work. What would happen if our brain and our nerve told our heart it could take a couple hours off?
As an infant, you learn as you grow up and our brain is growing. Look at the memory keeps coming back.
We've got memory coming up. We're going to hit memory. No, I'm not trying to discourage that, but memory, yeah. And we'll get to the memory and how amazing we are with our memory. But we start as a little bitty infant and we gather all this info and it goes out. But the nervous system makes all these things work. The nervous system also monitors all of our senses. We couldn't see without it. We couldn't hear without it. You couldn't feel without it. Our nervous system controls our thinking and our learning and our memory. And we'll we'll try to hit some of that here. I'll read some stuff from the book that will tell us more about that. Our skin, we talked about our skin, our integumentary system. We've got 3 to 4 million sensors that's part of our nervous system that tells us when we hurt. When we touch something hot, when we hit our head. We've got 3 to 4 million structures that's sensitive to pain. We've got about 500,000 structures that are sensitive to touch, that tells us when we are touching something, when we're sitting down versus standing up, when our feet are on the floor. We've got 500,000 of these touch detectors, and we've got about 200,000 temperature gauges all through our body. So our nervous system is responsible for all of these things, and it's constantly sending information to the brain. Does anybody want to take a guess about what speed normally our nervous system functions at to send a signal? Like when I touch something hot, how fast does that signal go to the brain? What do you think? It is. We don't really have to pause because it's going from our finger to our brain telling us that's hot, stupid, get your hand up. How fast do you think that happens though in, say, miles per hour? How fast does that get from there to there?
186,000 miles per hour.
That's exactly, no it's not. I could tell that was it's not that fast. It's 300 miles an hour. From there to there, it's 300 miles an hour. Have any of you ever watched the funny cars or the rail cars that are doing the quarter miles? They hit 300 plus miles an hour from there to there, and that's fast. But we're 300 miles an hour from there to there. Oh, that's hot. 300 miles an hour.
Well, then there's the signal that tells you to move.
Exactly. Then the signal that's hot gets there, and then the brain says, hey, arm, would you please do this and get it all? Yeah. So the signal for the thing gets there quickly, and then the signal to do something, we don't even think about it. It's literally instantaneous because 300 miles an hour from here to here, that's a blur.
But your eyeball can see that it's red hot, and that works at 386,000.
So the eyeball kicks in. I'm sure there's a number for that on something. But if we think about 300 miles an hour from there to there, or when you step on a rock sideways or turn your ankle, 300 miles an hour, zing, you know.
It would be interesting to look at you touch the hot, your hand automatically pulls away before you have the conscious thought that it's hot. That all happens.
Yes.
Your body reacts before, and then the thought comes almost like afterwards.
That's
Oh,
true.
it's hot.
That's true. It's so fast that we're doing it before we even realize, and yeah, we're doing it before we even realize it.
Muscles on its way to the brain. Hey,
And there's difference. The touch detectors are different than the muscle. So almost instantaneous when the pain is saying, whoa, the muscle's doing its thing, and it's instantaneous. We don't even think about it. But 300 miles an hour for our nerves to do their stuff. What an amazing design. Our brain, the center of our nervous system, how much does your brain weigh? Roughly. I used to think it was heavier, but they say 3.3 to 3 point something. I used to think our brain was heavier, but
Maybe you're thinking of the skull.
maybe, yeah. And I shouldn't say, huh? Do what? The average brain, no, yours. Did you hear that, Mark? 3. Did you hear what Jerry said?
Your brain begins shrinking by the age 40.
Yeah. However, that's true. However, how much of our brain do we actually use? Like, it's way less than 50%. It may be. Well, we've got room to spare as it shrinks, so it does shrink. But the average brain is just a little 3-pound thing. Now it's in this huge protective case. You got a protector on your phone or your computer, your tablet or whatever. Why do we have protective things on our phone and on our tablets?
Because we drop them.
Well, we do drop them. And what do we not want to happen to our brain? Our brain.
Well, our brain is pretty large compared to the people's brain.
That's true.
Very
That's true. Yeah, I saw this joke. I don't know why this just came up when you said that. It's these dinosaurs standing around, and one of them's up doing a presentation, and he's pointing at, he's doing a pointer, and he said, well, and there's all kind of dinosaurs out there, and he said, well, the future looks pretty bleak, gentlemen. The climate is changing, this is happening, and we all have a brain the size of a walnut. So it's like we're in trouble because they literally, they know that because of the skull capacity that they had to have small brains. But our brain's amazing, 3 pounds. It's the most specialized organ in the body. Have any of y'all ever heard of Isaac Asimov? I'm going to read a quote from Isaac Asimov. If I can find, let me find it. Page 54. 10% sounds about right. Some of us don't use that much. Oh, you didn't ask that question, so I'm going to have to answer it. The male brain weighs a few ounces more than the female brain. Wrong. The male brain is a few tenths of a pound, like a little bit more. But no, every brain doesn't weigh the same. The average is about 3. Yeah, on average 3 pounds. So some people who have a huge head, it's not all skull. They probably do have a little bigger brain. Whether they use more of it than you or not, though, who knows? I have heard that the reason the men need I have heard the reason the male brain is a few tenths more is so we can store all that unnecessary information that we hear all the time from the female brain. I don't know if that's true. Wade, do you think that's right? There's a spot. Hey. Yeah, Marie's not here. Hey, Eric's got something serious now.
Since you mentioned the size and everything, it was not too long ago they discovered that Einstein had an extra lobe, and they found a correlation. He was playing the violin. Violinists develop a extra little lobe on their brain, and they've repeated that with other autopsies.
That's interesting.
Einstein's brain, when they first, what was different about this guy?
So there's variation in our brain. Certain parts are bigger than others on certain people, and maybe others like that have a different part, all different structure altogether. I'm hunting Asimov's. Well, the brain. Our brain learns. So if we do certain things like music and are interested in that, here it is. I finally found it. I'm sorry. Let me read this while I found it. The brain, located in its protective case, is the most specialized organ in the body. Isaac Asimov, a well-known author and a very radical humanist, this is what he said. He said that the brain is, and these are spot on. These guys are saying spot on stuff, but they're too stupid to accept what that means. Isaac Asimov said that the brain is the most complex and orderly arrangement of matter in the universe. Absolutely right, Isaac. Perfectly said. Who arranged it, Isaac? If it is the most complex and orderly arrangement, design in the universe, who designed it? Who arranged it, Isaac? Another physicist, similarly, in a few years later, came with this quote. He said that the human brain is the most developed and complex system known to science. True. Who created it? Where did the design come from? Now back to the memory thing. I don't want us to be able to get this for sure. I found this amazing, absolutely amazing. Our memory and the information that we store from the time we're little and the things we learn. If we put all that information on a bookshelf, if you just imagine a bookshelf of everything you've learned from the time you were an infant, you, me, individually, that bookshelf would be 500 miles long. If every piece of information that we ever learned and stored in our brain, now it may not stay there. Sometimes we forget things like stuff that we learn in school, for our classes and for our tests. We learn it, we store it. But if everything we ever learned in our lifetime was put on a bookshelf, it would be 500 miles long. It's there. That's why, it's like, let me go find that. It's here somewhere. But you did learn that piece of information, and it's stored, and that one, and that one, and that one, and that one. That's how amazing our brain is. Yeah, they have that info, and they can pull it back out. Let me read some of this stuff about computers. We think computers are such an amazing thing, but if you know this computer, I don't know about it, but there's a computer called the Cray 2 supercomputer, or there was. It's apparently the epitome of the computers that we have or had at this time, and it was even 1,000 times less capable than the human brain, the most complex computer that we ever created as far as storage. Oh, it was probably in a big building, definitely. They used to have these supercomputers. They are big. So no rational person would say that supercomputer happened as an accident. That Cray 2 computer or whatever computer that's eaten up that whole building. No person is idiotic enough to say, look at that. It's just amazing and wonderful that thing sprung up, that computer happened. Nobody would do that about the computer, but they blow off our brain with, it just happened. Ain't it great that it occurred that way?
So in the news last week, artificial intelligence, AI is a big thing now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And one of the guys that's in an AI at Microsoft came out and said, well, it's no more smarter than a dog. It's about as smart as a dog. So, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, and we think we're so amazing with the things we churn out. Let me go on. So the brain, there's the brain, memory, the stuff it does. I want to hit a couple of our organs that the brain controls, and we'll have to go through these real quick. But let's talk about the eye. I want to read just a few things about an eye. Let me ask this though: what thing that we have today was created from the eye as its model? Camera. Our eye is the most incredible and intricate camera that's ever been, and we'll never be able to create a camera quite like the eye, but the camera was created as a model from the eye. Let me read some of these quotes about the eye. We all know what our eye does. I won't go through all of that. Yeah, y'all know how the eye functions. Let me see if there's any of that we need to look at. Yeah, let me just read some of these comments. I think this one's from Darwin. It is. Y'all know Charles Darwin? Renowned atheist, The Origin of Species, that he wrote in 1859. Well, here's what he said. Here's what Charles Darwin said. To suppose that the eye, with all its, I don't even know that word, imitable. A lot of these scientists like to use words too that makes them sound smarter. To suppose that the eye, with all its imitable contrivances for adjusting the focus to different distances, for admitting different amounts of light, and for the correction of spherical and chromatic aberration, could have been formed by natural selection, which he taught, seems, I freely confess, absurd in the highest sense. Yeah, Darwin, it is absurd. Why'd you write the book? And why are so many people following it? It is absurd to think that the eye can function like it functions purely as a result of what he would call natural selection. Absolutely. I found something Charles Darwin said that's true. It is absurd in the highest sense. He said that. So the eye is a marvelous instrument. It can do so many things that we'll never be able to recreate with our cameras and telescopes. And we're very thankful that we had a designer that designed it, and we know that's God. The ear. Let's get the ear real quick. There's one in every crowd. Melissa. Most of us have an ear, have two ears. Do you know why we have two ears and one mouth, by the way? This is a philosophy from Judge Judy. Why do we have two ears and one mouth while we're on the topic of ears? Because we should listen twice as much as we talk. Y'all get that? It's true. We got two ears. So the ear, real quickly. The ear's got these, how many bones? Our ear's comprised of these bones. You remember how many there are? You got a, Three. For bonus points, what are they called? I'm just kidding. Y'all don't know what they, Eric probably knows. Come on, Eric, what are they called? Huh?
Malleus, incus, and stapes.
Oh, that's the official name. I was going to go with hammer, anvil, and stirrup. That's the official. Eric took it. Eric took it too. I did. But these three little bones, they have to receive sound waves. They convert it. And you've got the nerves going on at the same time. And these vibrations and these nerve signals, it happens so quick, we hear. And it's amazing that we can hear. And we don't have time to hear any more about the ear. But the ear is an amazing design. Just those of you, I said those of us. I don't think I've lost any hearing yet. Melissa has. But those of you...
You didn't hear that.
I didn't hear that. I don't hear out of this side sometimes. Those of you that have lost some of your hearing, how important is it? Tell them, sure. It's a very important thing. And I'll tell you this in closing, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard back when I was in college, I heard that studies had been done that prove that people that cannot hear have a harder time coping in their life than people who cannot see. Because if we don't hear, that input that we lose there is apparently worse than the input that we lose by vision. And I don't know, I hope to not lose. I lost vision for a couple of days, and that was really rough. But hearing is important. It's intricate. We'll stop there. We're already after. But if y'all want to read some more of this, there's a ton of stuff on the. This is all about just the body. This is. I think the outer part, yeah. Your nose and your ears. That's true. Our nose. That's because we become more and more nosy and we want to hear everything. I don't know, but I think that's true. I think those two. Thank y'all. Everybody have a good rest of Father's Day and be sure and eat.